Hey, what's going on everybody? It's Luke James, not the singer. If you want some promo or your music reviewed, you can hit up luke@redmattersite.com. That's SITE. And you can also send any questions there if you want some advice or want to hear my opinion on any particular topic. You also want to be sure to check me out on Twitter and Instagram at LukeJamesBGN, on Facebook.com/LukeJamesReviews, and of course, man, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel to stay up to date with everything I got going on. But as for today's show, I'm going to be ranking Kanye West albums from worst to best, and then the last segment I have some gaming and Netflix talk to do. To be clear, I'm not including anything outside of Kanye's 8 solo records because I want to keep things focused here, and I'm not doing full breakdowns or reviews either. You can already check my reviews for most of these albums on the channel, but I really just want to drop my list and explain why it is the way it is. Of course, I'll also be reviewing his album Yandhi when it drops, and then when it does, I'll speak on where I'd place it in my list as well. I was actually going to do this list after that album, but due to Kanye being all over the place and a bit of an idiot, which is a whole other story, he just never dropped it. We do know that we're going to get Yandhi on November 23rd, so that's what we got to wait for. And if you guys enjoy this ranking idea, let me know how you feel about it. I'm planning on doing lists like this for other big name artists like Jay-Z, Lil Wayne, and maybe Eminem to name a few, so if you guys enjoy this, more of those will be on the way. But right now, we're going to jump right into this list with my number 8/least favorite Kanye album, 2013's Yeezus. After all the listens I've given this thing, I still don't like it very much, but I do acknowledge that it's one of Kanye's most divisive records, so if anything, it always does make for interesting discussion. The production on this one is very experimental, grating, and glitchy throughout. You might even say it's somewhat industrial. And that sound just didn't do anything for me at all because I couldn't vibe with it, I couldn't bounce with it, and lyrically I wasn't overly impressed with Kanye's egomania at an all-time high. In spite of all that, this album was still critically acclaimed as one of the year's best, and I do think Black Skinhead was alright because of the heavy drums and raw energy to it. Had a little bit of a tribal feel to it, just some rowdy ass shit, so it was okay. And Bound 2 was decent because it gave us that classic sample-based Kanye sound that we've come to love him for. But other than that, this is easily my least favorite Kanye album, and to all those people in 2013 who said my mind would be changed after a year or two, it has now been 5 years, and my mind hasn't changed on this album, so I really don't see that happening. Coming in at number 7, we have 2018's Ye. My main issue with this one is just how forgettable it is. Definitely don't think it's a trash album, wouldn't say it's a great album either, but it is just this very short and cohesive project that didn't stick out in really any way to me. Even now, when I was making my list and looking back at the track list, I couldn't even remember what most of these songs were about, how they sounded, or anything like that, so I didn't think there were very high highs on this thing. I do remember the first listen being kinda cool because he was opening up about his mental struggles, but this shit just dropped earlier this year and I'm already having a hard time recalling it. Like I said, I did go back and listen to some of it. I realized that the production throughout is pretty cool, but this is just one of those instances where it felt incomplete to me. On one hand, we're always complaining about these long-ass albums, but where this was only 7 tracks and so short, it just kind of left me wanting more, you know what I mean? It was a solid listen, it was alright, and I do like it better than Yeezus because sonically it suits my taste more. Just a lot of that sample-based stuff, but, you know, not an overly memorable album in my opinion, and I really don't feel the need to come back to it. Now at number 6, we have The Life of Pablo from 2016, and this one actually does have a handful of great tracks on it. Real Friends, 20 Hours, No More Parties in LA, and St. Pablo all have that classic Kanye feel, and I think these are some of the best tracks he's made over the past handful of years. Just great sample-based beats with those quality-ass bars. Quality-ass bars. That's kind of like an oxymoron. You can't say something's quality and ass, but you know what I mean. I'm just saying some quality bars. I guess some good-ass shit. Now, I do remember when I first heard those couple of tracks I mentioned, I was so excited for this album, man. I just felt like Kanye was going to be back on his bullshit, really hitting us up with that classic stuff that we wanted. But then, once this album actually dropped, man, it just felt like a mess to me. I even remember him dropping multiple versions of this, so very clearly he must have thought it was sloppy too, and the first half of this album just didn't give me much at all. I'd say I'm probably one of the few people in the world who thought Ultralight Beam was overhyped and overrated. And do you guys remember when that song came out? Everybody on Twitter was going crazy. Song of the year, best thing he's ever done. Oh my god, it's so incredible. Chance the Rapper. Oh my god, this shit is amazing. But I really just didn't care for that one at all. Then with Father Stretch My Hands Part 1, we got one of the most epic song intros ever. But we also got a line about bleached assholes. I think that right there pretty much sums this album up for me. You get some really high highs and really low lows, and then a bunch of stuff in between that's just meh. And at number 5, we have his 2008 album called 808s and Heartbreak. And the funny thing about this is that when it came out, it was my least favorite album of his for a long time. Like, this was always the album I went to when people asked me my least favorite Kanye album, but now that he's released all these other records, I've actually come to appreciate this one more. This was just a very divisive album, much like Yeezus, because he had flipped his sound up, going from that more traditional hip-hop sound to synthy auto-crooning with pop and electro elements. For a lot of people, I think this album is a love it or hate it thing, and that's certainly understandable since it deviated from the usual Kanye. I still remember when the lead single Love Lockdown came out and people were lost, like, what the fuck is Kanye on? This is some all-new shit. But that song has grown on me a bit because it's very catchy, and I do like those charging drums. Heartless was a pretty solid banger as well. That's a decent track in the same type of vein. And I would have to say that my favorite song on here is Amazing. I just love that Jeezy feature, and I also remember it being featured on one of the 2K games I had back in the day, so it grew on me pretty quick. I just feel, with these 4 albums here, you're really getting a lot of different sounds, Kanye doing a lot of different things, so they're just in my bottom 4 because they didn't stick with me. I certainly appreciate how he was doing some different things. He set the game in a different trajectory with that 808s and Heartbreak. A lot of people started doing more auto-tuning and making that type of stuff, so I appreciate that. Yeezus was one of the most discussed topics when it came out, so that's kind of cool at least. But musically, sonically, I really was not into these albums much at all. I don't revisit them, but it is kind of funny how The Life of Pablo grew on me a little bit. Even when I reviewed it, I didn't think it was all out trash or anything like that. I just wish it was more cohesive, more solid. It's actually kind of funny because that one was too long, all over the place, it dragged on. But then, with Ye, it was the complete opposite. It was just short, felt like an incomplete meal, and it really wasn't giving me everything that I needed. So, these are my bottom 4. Didn't have a whole lot to say about these ones. That's why they're my bottom 4. I just don't care for them very much, but I think I've explained why I'm not into them. And I wasn't planning on doing full reviews here or anything like that anyway, just giving you my list and letting you know how I feel. So we are going to take a very quick break here. I know it's coming very soon, but the next segment is going to be much longer because, hey, we're going to talk about my top 4 Kanye projects, and I do have much more to say about these, so stay tuned.
Greetings, y'all. This is Vulcan the Crusader, and you can just Google me, Vulcan with a K, Crusader with a K, and you are now listening to the Luke James Podcast. Decadence and class shall prevail.
Alright, we're back. Shout out to Vulcan the Crusader for the drop. You want to make sure you check him out and give his music a spin because he's got a lot of dope work. Actually reviewed some of his music on the channel, so you can look it up on there too. But right now we're going to get back into my list with my number 4 Kanye album, 2007's Graduation. This one is just a very snug, fun, and cohesive project that almost landed in my number 3 spot, but you know what? You're going to have to wait and see what number 3 is, because I did like number 3 just a little bit better. I actually feel like with my top 4 Kanye albums, I could probably mix them up given any day. Like, you might ask me again tomorrow, I might switch a couple of them around, because I just like all these projects. You know how it goes, but I had to decide, and this is what I'm going with. So, I didn't love the single Stronger because I've always felt that the original Daft Punk version is superior. I remember at the time I was really enjoying Daft Punk's music, so when I heard that remix that Kanye did, I was kind of disappointed. But it was still a fun track and it fit with the overall aesthetic of the album. Just that bright artwork and neon feel that he had going on with this one was pretty cool. But I did love the other single, Can't Tell Me Nothing. This had a great beat and interesting content because Kanye was speaking on all the stress of his newfound money and fame, and really, the only bad track on here is Drunken Hot Girls. To this day, I think most people actually consider that to be one of Kanye's worst songs ever. But then you got Flashing Lights with Dwelle. That's one of my personal favorite Kanye tracks, and Dwelle is a singer who I think is underrated. Good Life, that was a great club single, just a lot of fun, and that MJ sample was cool. And of course, Big Brother was a brutally honest track about his relationship with Jay-Z. I think that one really showed off Kanye's skills as a lyricist as he was breaking down all the things that he went through with him. And it was cool how Jay-Z even responded just by acknowledging that this was a good track. He didn't really take it in a bad way, at least based on what I remember. He thought it was a very dope track. So that goes to show you that this was an appreciated song by not just me, not just by the listeners, but also Jigga, who the song was sort of aimed at and about. You also had the great ode to Chicago called Coming Home, bunch of other great tracks. I just really love the production on here because he was still doing a lot of that sample-based stuff, but bringing in some more synthy, futuristic electro stuff as well. Truly a great album, and I didn't think it would be this high on my list when I was going to make it. I just wasn't sure where it would land, but here it is, and I think it deserves to be here. At number 3, though, we have 2005's Late Registration. With this album, I feel like Kanye really stepped his production up a bit because it was much more layered, and the live instrumentation he added just brought a whole new element to what he was doing. Just very natural and organic, and it even spawned a live album called Late Orchestration, which was also pretty cool. I absolutely love the lead single from this, Diamonds from Sierra Leone. That production is just so extravagant and epic, and then the remix with Jay-Z is even better in my opinion. There are just great verses on this track where they're speaking on conflict, diamonds, and some other stuff that's going on. And the second single, Gold Digger, was cool too, man. This was just a really fun track, you know what I mean? You got Jamie Foxx doing his Ray Charles thing on there, and Kanye is dropping humorous bars about gold diggers. To this day, I actually think of that Boondocks episode whenever I hear it, because they featured that song in the episode where Granddad was with that scandalous-ass stripper. It just really fit the idea of the song, and it worked with the show, so that was cool. Another thing I think of with this song is how much music used to blank out the word white girl as if that was some type of slur. That just was a really weird thing to me. I don't know if your guys' music channels were doing that as well, but I do remember here in Canada much music was doing that as if saying white girl was just some horrible thing. But, you know, maybe they were just trying to dodge race issues or something like that. Sometimes it is about context, because you know that song, I forget who sings it, but it's like, I'm a bitch, I'm a lover, I'm a child, I'm a mother. You might not know that shit, but they used to play that all the time around here. It might have even been a Canadian artist, I don't know, but she's saying bitch a million times on the song, and they never blanked it out, but it's the context, because she's a woman that's saying it and using it in some sort of powerful way, whereas in rap songs, when they said bitch, they still blanked it out. I am getting off track, but this is just something I found interesting, so I brought it up. But getting back to this album, man, there were so many good songs with it. I love that next level production, like I said, and I thought the content was pretty powerful in a lot of spots too. I mentioned Diamonds from Sierra Leone dealing with conflict diamonds, and I always liked how Hey Mama was such a heartwarming track. It even became more powerful when we saw him break down while performing it after his mother's passing. You can tell that song meant a lot to him when he made it, and then to lose his mother how he did just made the song even stronger. We also had the song Addiction, which dealt with the various forms of addiction from girls to money to drugs. And of course, man, we got some great feature-based tracks on here too, like Touch the Sky, which introduced most of the world to Lupe Fiasco. Gotta love the sample on that from Curtis Mayfield. And Drive Slow with Paul Wall and GLC is just the perfect late-night creep anthem. Really great album. Like a lot of tracks here, I'm probably leaving some out. But again, man, I'm not trying to give you a full review here, just speaking on some of the moments that really stuck out. Now this is where it gets interesting, man. Coming in at number 2 for me is My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, but this honestly feels like it's more of a 1B than a number 2. I feel like I said earlier, if you ask me again tomorrow, I could have this at number 1 just depending on how I feel, because these 4 Kanye albums that I love are just all really great, especially my bottom 2 here. So I do tend to push College Dropout ahead. Obviously, you guys know by now that's the number 1 since I didn't mention it, so it's not like I'm spoiling the surprise. But I do think My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy was a great bounce back from 808s and Heartbreak. I already mentioned how that was a very divisive album that people were split on, but I feel like this album right here just had everything. My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy just did a great job of combining all of Kanye's different sounds, while also expanding on them and freshening them up a little bit. On top of all that, I like the themes throughout this album because Kanye was struggling with fame and relationships. It just felt like a very personal and cathartic thing, even though we know there were tons of writers involved, you know what I mean? That's something that's been talked about tons with this record, who wrote what part and who did this and da-da-da-da-da. And I do know that the credits on this thing are crazy. You look at all these songs, there's all kinds of people doing background vocals here and there, people helping with the production, with the writing and da-da-da-da-da. But regardless, this shit just came together so great that I don't even care, man. He was heavily involved in the making of his own album. It's hard to say who did what exactly unless you really were to break every single thing down. I just think this is a dope album regardless. Sometimes people try to take away from it because of all the people involved. But hey, man, I bet even some of your favorite albums have more people involved than you think. Not to say everybody's getting everything ghostwritten, but you know damn well there's people in the room saying, hey, it might be dope if you said this. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? I remember even back in the days when I used to rap, not to put me on a high level, because obviously I'm not. I haven't rapped in a long-ass time. You guys probably haven't heard most of my shit. But back when I did used to rap, sometimes that's how the writing process went, you know what I mean? Especially if we were doing a group song and everybody was hanging around, you'd be spitting something, someone might say, oh, try this, it might go in with my verse, or maybe you should say this here, or whatever. Just part of the creative process is people working together. But to get back to this, I also kind of feel like this album could have been what started Kanye's descent into madness. That might be a bit dramatic to say that he's a fucking madman, but I think you guys know what I mean. Shit is definitely different now, and this was around the time where it really seemed like he was starting to deal with a lot of different things. Oddly enough, I didn't like the single Runaway, and I can remember people thinking I was crazy for not liking it, but I really did like some of the other singles on here. Power had that epic feel to it, even though movies and trailers rode that song to the fucking dirt. Just seems like you were hearing that everywhere from what I remember. And you know, I've also found it cool how so many people are featured on the song All the Lights. This ties back into what I was just saying. You check the credits, there's tons of people listed, even Elton John and Fergie's on there doing a little piece. You got Kid Cudi, you know, just all kinds of people adding vocals and helping out. Rihanna obviously as well. I just thought it was very interesting how, you know, I should probably look more into it. I think there's actually a documentary or a series that really breaks down who did what, but it's just really cool to see how much went into making this album and how the results just really worked good, even with all these different people. You even had great features on Barfest like Monster and So Appalled, and Devil in Disguise is another all-time favorite Kanye track for me. That soul sample is just so beautiful and luxurious, and to this day, I think Rick Ross's verse on there is one of the best things he's ever done. I just think Kanye really stretched everything to its limits on this album. The features were there, the production was great, so many great things happening with it, and yet, obviously like I said, my number one is 2004's debut from Kanye, College Dropout. Not only do I love this one musically because of the tremendous sample work, it also brings back a lot of memories for me because this shit really shifted the hip-hop landscape at the time. Of course, the Blueprint played a huge part in that as well. You had Kanye on much of that production. But for those who weren't around back then, what I'm getting at is that Kanye helped push sample-based conscious rap back into the forefront. Of course, he wasn't the only one out there making that stuff, but in the late 90s and early 2000s, the bling era was leading the charge. And don't get me wrong, man, I absolutely loved all that stuff too. You regularly see people hating on No Limit and Cash Money. They didn't have bars, they made trash albums, they made so many. And I get it. Some of those labels were pumping out records, especially No Limit. You'd open up a No Limit album and there'd be like, coming soon. It would show 20 albums and like 3 of them would come out. I do get the knocks on these labels, but they made plenty of club bangers at the time. If you actually dig into some of the lyricism, you'll find great artists. On No Limit, I think Mac and Fiend are underrated. And even with Cash Money, if you look at some of the shit that BG and Juvenile were rapping about, they were really painting pictures of the streets. A lot of people just think of the stuff that they were doing with their singles and, you know, their videos and the shit that people really saw. But within the albums, I think there was a lot of great content and bars. But we're getting back, man. What I'm trying to say is that College Dropout caused a resurgence of more traditional hip-hop, you know, going a bit deeper with the content, and that was just very refreshing. This was also the album that proved Kanye is a competent rapper, because before that he was mostly known as a producer, and I think a lot of people were skeptical about his ability as an MC. As I said, this was that conscious Kanye on this album, a far cry from the Kanye we have today who basically seems like he's completely lost. He just came across as a very humble and relatable person on this album. He had musings on religion, education, and being black in America, among other things. You know, people dealing with issues within themselves, feeling insecure on tracks like All Falls Down. So to me, this album is a classic from pretty much every angle. Changed the game, great production, great bars, sonically just very enjoyable. And then I just have all those memories to go along with this one. I actually remember when I first got my license and got my first car, I was driving that 99 two-door red Sunfire, man. This is back in the day. Obviously, you know, this was a couple years, I think, after this came out. I forget exactly when it was. I'm getting old, man. You don't remember exact years. But I do remember putting this CD in. I was blasting We Don't Care, and that just felt like the perfect song at the time, man. I had gotten my license. I felt good. I wasn't supposed to make it past 25. Joke's on you. I'm still alive. Absolutely love that track. I get lots of nostalgia from this album, and there's so many other great tracks on this album, man. I'm not going to run them all down, but obviously Slow Jams had Kanye with plenty of quotables. Twisted was snapping on there like only he could. Just a smooth-ass track. All Falls Down, like I said, was one of Kanye's most conscious moments. You had Spaceship, the ode to shitty 9-to-5 jobs. Just a tremendous, well-rounded album. I don't think he could have came with a much better debut because this proved to everybody that he could do what he could do, man. He was a great producer and a great rapper. Even Through the Wire was an amazing track as a single because it had that sample-based sound, very different from all the stuff that was going on at the time, and he was rapping with his fucking jaw shut because he had just been in a car accident. Very clever track, sampling Through the Fire by, who was that by? Shaka Khan, maybe? I don't know, I'm just going on the fly here. He sampled that and was saying Through the Wire instead because he's rapping through the wire. Very dope. Love this album. And there you have it, man. that is me ranking my top 8 Kanye albums from worst to best. I want you guys to let me know in the comment section what your list would be. Feel free to explain why, because I think this is a very interesting exercise. Like I said, he's got a lot of albums that people are very split on. I could understand people having Yeezus or 808s and Heartbreak as their number 1 or in their top 4, because while I didn't like them much, they're so different that I could understand someone else enjoying the sonic palette of it. Just something very different. So, that's how it goes with discographies. But as I said, meanwhile, as you can see, my Windows is making noise because it wants me to update or some shit. God damn, I hate Windows, man. Always doing this annoying shit. But anyway, this is the end of the second segment, so we're going to go to a break, and we are going to come back with me just discussing Persona 5. I finally beat it. Some of the other games I have that, I ordered a game, got some other games I want to get, been watching all kinds of shit on Netflix. We're just going to wild out and briefly break down some of the stuff I've been doing lately, so stay tuned for that.
What up, y'all? It's your boy P. Sake, MC out of Chicago by way of Cincinnati, Ohio. You're now listening to the Luke James podcast. Luke James, not the singer. Scorsese of this music review shit, I just fucked that up. It's all good. You can hit me up on Twitter. It's Pete Sake Music, S-A-Y-K-E. You can find my music anywhere you find your music. Heaven Can Wait out now. Golden Rule coming soon. Yeah, Luke James.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed my Kanye list, and shout out to Pete's Sake for the drop. But now we're going to wrap up the show by nerding out for a little bit, so you gotta bear with me if you're not into video games. Now, in the first episode of the podcast, I talked about how I started Persona 5 and was really enjoying it, but I finally beat that shit after close to 90 hours, and I can honestly confirm at this point that it's one of my favorite games of all time. First I said it was top 5, now I'm thinking maybe top 3, and I could probably make an argument for number 1, man. Like, I played tons of games in my life, but no game has really had quite an effect on me like this one has, which I will break down in a minute. I'm just trying to say if you're an RPG fan, you need to buy this game ASAP, because I can't imagine you being let down by it, and even though I don't usually rate games, you guys know me for rating music, I would say this game is a legit 5 out of 5 to me. I actually like this game so much that I started a New Game Plus because there's more stuff out there to explore, and that's something I don't usually do because you know how it is with most New Game Pluses. You don't really get to do too much unless, you haven't done all the other stuff the first playthrough, but most of the time you just carry over some money and items and stuff like that. There's not really a whole lot extra to the story, whereas in this one, there definitely is. There's all kinds of new options that are unlocked, there's more to explore and build at, so I'm going to have a lot of fun with this one, man. I can see myself putting close to 200 hours on this thing, maybe around 150, something like that. I don't know, we'll see how far it goes, but either way I'm looking forward to this New Game Plus. But I gotta say, man, the final run of this game definitely gave me some epic moments. Anyone who plays RPGs knows how difficult certain bosses can be, and it's even magnified more where you get that RPG cliche where the boss has like 5 or 6 forms. You think you beat him the first time around, then he comes back like, ha ha ha, this is my true power you're about to see, blah blah blah, something like that, and then he does it again and again. I swear to God in this game that happened like 3 or 4 times, not to mention that the boss who I thought was the final boss wasn't the final boss because there was another like 10 hours of gameplay after that. This game just really had me going, and like I said, man, you definitely need to check it out. And you know how it is with every RPG, when you get to the ending, you save all your elixirs, full heals, things that restore your magic points or special points, whatever you want to call them, and usually you don't even use them in the final battle for some reason, as if you're going to use them after. But man, these battles were hard as hell, and I was burning through all of them, because if I didn't, definitely would have been fucked. It's just one of those bosses where you're getting hit with every status ailment in the book, as well as some new ones that you just can't do anything about. So it is possible that you could get completely unlucky and your whole team could be wiped out in an instant. Not to mention there's insta-kills that give you those mini heart attacks if they actually hit you. But I finally did beat this game, and it took me quite a while to do. And the thing is, now that I've beaten this, I found myself going through some Persona 5 withdrawal. It's just that the character development in this game is so incredible, to the point that you actually feel invested in all of your friends and confidants within the game. Once you watch that final cutscene where you're saying goodbye to your friends and everybody is leaving, you actually feel like you're leaving something behind. And I know, man, that is some supreme dorky nerd shit to say, but that's just how immersive this game is, because it is damn near flawless. So now I'm at that stage, when you beat a game where you're kind of worried, especially a game that you really enjoyed, you're just thinking to yourself, how is it going to get better than this? What am I going to play next? Nothing is really going to be able to take the spot of this game because it held me down for so damn long. So that's kind of where I'm at now. But thankfully, I was thinking of getting the Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey remake on 3DS. Just thought that might hold me over for a bit since that ties into the whole Persona series. And, like I said in the last episode, I think I said so, I pre-ordered Soul Calibur 6, so my physical copy of that should be arriving in a couple days, and I'll definitely be doing a segment on that in the podcast once I put some hours on it. But to come back to Persona 5 right quick, I like this shit so much that I really think I'm going to get a physical copy just to have it. Probably keep it in the case because I already have it downloaded. I get most of my games through the PlayStation Store, but you never know what's going to happen to your downloaded versions of games, and you might lose them. So I figure I'll just get a physical copy to have just in case down the line somewhere I want to play it because the shit is dope. In other news, Castlevania Symphony of the Night is finally coming to the PlayStation Store on October 26th, so I think I'll probably pick that one up for old time's sake. This is one of those games that's also a favorite game of all time, and it's only a little over $20, so I figure it's well worth the price. It also comes with Castlevania Rondo of Blood. I forget what system that was on, but I'm not too familiar with it. But hey man, you're getting 2 classic Castlevania games for such a cheap price that it seems like a good deal. So basically, ever since I got my PS4, I was hoping for Symphony of the Night to become available, and now that it's finally happened, I gotta follow through and pick it up, because I'm gonna be putting hours on that. Just seems like it's actually been a while since they made one of those Metroidvania-style games from Castlevania. Seems like the last one I played was Dawn of Sorrow on 3DS. I think there have been some other ones that came on 3DS, as well as some independent companies who made games that are similar. But you know what? Hopefully this sells a lot and does really well, so they realize that they can make some more of these games, man. Give us a new Castlevania, make it longer, make the castle epic, give us all kinds of great RPG elements. I would definitely purchase that. And since I did mention Castlevania, Season 2 of the Netflix series is due out on the same day of this, this Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood combination that's coming out October 26th, and so is this Netflix series. If you haven't watched Season 1, I definitely think it's worth your time, because it is just so well-rounded, man. The animation is dope, it's gory, the main character is hilarious, and on top of all that, it stays true to the video games in a lot of ways which actually surprised me. You know how it goes with video game adaptations, man. They are usually terrible, and that's something that's always boggled my mind, because the story and characters are already there. All you gotta do is just take that and apply it properly, but for some damn reason, this seems to be impossible. I know you got a couple video game movies or shows out there that did pretty well, but there are some that are all out terrible. You can just look at the Super Mario Bros. Movie with the dinosaur-headed Goombas, the Double Dragon movie where Abobo is some hulking mutant instead of a black man. Obviously, I'm dating myself with these references, but that shit is so bad, you probably know about it even if you're a bit younger. That shit is epically bad, so I think pretty much everyone knows of it. So I'm definitely looking forward to watching Season 2 of Castlevania, and since I did bring up Netflix, I want to talk briefly on a couple of shows right quick before I get out of here. First of all, I watched the new season of Bojack Horseman, and that show just seems to get better every time it comes back. When it first came out, I was really skeptical because I thought it'd be another one of those simple, lowbrow adult cartoons, but it actually really surprised me. The writing is just tremendous with this show because it can seamlessly go from being goofy to dealing with real issues. I'm talking about stuff like depression and substance abuse. So if you've been wondering about this show and you kind of been on the fence about it, I would definitely recommend it. I'm not going to take a deep dive here and break everything down, but the show is centered around this guy, or a horseman, Bojack Horseman, who used to be a sitcom star, but now he's basically trying to find his way and stay relevant while battling various issues. Basically, he's a very complex character who you can feel sorry for 1 minute, and then you think of him as a piece of shit the next. I feel like it's the same way with most of the characters, actually, because as the seasons go on, you get quite a bit of depth into who they are, what they're motivated, and all that type of stuff. I just think it's great how they deal with things like depression, sexuality, adoption. There's really a lot of stuff here, and they do it very well. It also gets very creative with its episodes, so that makes for a fun binge. Like in one season, there's an underwater episode that's free of dialogue, but it still sucks you in through its story and atmosphere. And in the last season, there's a full episode that's just Bojack giving a eulogy at a funeral. Hearing both of these ideas might sound kind of weird or boring, but I promise you it's not. It's just a very clever show, and that's refreshing to me. Now, I'm not hating on lowbrow humor because I like that shit as well, including the newest season of Big Mouth, which I did just watch. This is honestly one of those shows where if someone said it was all-out trash, I would completely understand and not even bother arguing with them, because it is just filthy, immature, and juvenile. In spite of that, I can't help but laugh when I watch this shit, because it is beyond ridiculous. You got talking pubic hairs, hormone monsters, a kid who impregnates pillows. It's just a show that very clearly knows how stupid and graphic it is, so that's part of the fun. Although at the same time, it does tie in a bit of commentary about puberty and sexuality, since that's the basis of the show. It's not really trying to be overly smart or clever, but it's just a lot of fun, you know what I mean? There are plenty of great characters, like my boy Coach Steve, who finally got to do sex on a lady. Just the things that come out of this guy's mouth, to me, it's just hilarious. He's just so awkward, such a weird dude. You got the old hormone monster. I think his name was Rick, I forget, but he was gold every time he came on the scene, including when he's trying to teach the boy how to jerk off by grinding his dick like a pepper shaker. That was kind of funny. And Maya Rudolph is perfect as a female hormone monster. Just a couple of things about this show I enjoyed. It's great for cheap laughs, something dumb to watch. You can put it on in the background while you're doing other shit and still enjoy it because it doesn't get too deep or heavy. So these are some of the shows that I've been watching. And you know what? I'm excited to talk about the new Castlevania season when it comes out. That's kind of what started this whole rant here. But once I watch that, I'll probably do a segment on that coming up. Also planning to do a segment on Soul Calibur 6 since I'll be playing the hell out of that one in a couple of days. And I do have a special episode with a guest planned for the next podcast. Halloween is right around the corner, so we're going to do something that's very related to horror movies and that sort of stuff. So hopefully if everything goes as planned, I'll get that out in a week or two, and it is going to be great. But thank you again for listening to episode 3 of the podcast. Or thank you for listening for the first time, I guess, if you're listening through. You know what I mean, goddammit. Thank you for supporting the podcast and checking it out. Still got a lot of stuff that I want to do as far as getting it on Spotify and other platforms. I got a couple weeks vacation coming up. Soon I'm going to be on parental leave because my son is going to be here anytime now. So once I have all that time, I'll start putting it on other platforms. And you know what? The content will probably come out quicker as well because I'll always be home. Still going to be busy as hell with the kids, with my wife and all those things, but it does give me a bit more flexibility when I'm home all the time because I can work at night, through the day, whenever. So we'll see what happens. Thank you for listening, everybody, and I will see you next time.